Whether you're just starting out on your fitness journey or you've been lifting for years, finding the right plan to maximize muscle gain can be a struggle. That's why I'm excited to share Alpha Progression. It's a strength training app built by serious lifters who know their stuff, competitive bodybuilders and personal trainers. Alpha Progression is 100% science based and designed to help you hit your goals efficiently. It's already been named App of the Day by Apple twice, and it's the top rated fitness app in Germany. Now it's expanding worldwide to help people like you and me. As a listener, you can get 20% off your subscription by heading to www.alphaprogression.com/rounders. Level up your training with Alpha Progression today. Hey, baseball fans. Welcome to Rounders, your baseball history podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Lambert. Get ready to step into the time machine with us, and we're not just talking stats and scores. We're digging into the heart and soul of the players, teams, and countries that have made this a global sport. From the underdog stories to those jaw dropping moments, Rounders is your front seat to the epic journey of baseball. So grab a seat in the digital bleachers, relax, and let's swing for the fences together. And a happy weekend to you, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the show. We're going to be doing some what ifs for today's episode. I want you to sit back and imagine a world where the MLB had teams like the Orlando Sun Rays or the Indianapolis Arrows, or maybe a team in Mexico City, or a Toronto team that wasn't the Blue Jays. We're going to be looking at the stories of 9 MLB expansion teams that almost happened but didn't. Let's go ahead and get into it. Back in 1990, the MLB was looking to expand the National League, and the city of Orlando, Florida, threw its hat into the ring as one of 6 finalists. Now, the city didn't even have a stadium ready to go, but a very large corporation in the United States called Amway had gotten involved with this bid. President of the company, Richard DeVos, came out publicly and backed the bid and helped finance some flashy branding with a logo for a team called the Sun Rays. And they had bright colors like quicksilver, electric blue, and magenta. So this was a serious pitch that was put together to try and catch the league's attention. They even signed a preliminary deal with 4-time All-Star Bob Boone to be the manager of the club. Bob Boone is the father of MLB players Aaron Boone and Brett Boone as well. So things were looking good, and the president of the organization was very optimistic about the city's chances. His name was Pat Williams. He said in an interview he was so confident that, quote, "We're up on everybody with the nickname and the logo," end quote. But despite all of that flash and bravado that this bid put together, Orlando came up short and they lost out to their rival in state, Miami. And then the MLB also chose another location for this bid, placing a team in Denver. Another city also put in a serious bid in 1990 to be able to bring a club to their city. And this particular delegation had some big names like New York Governor Mario Cuomo and talk show host Larry King. Both of these backers were very upbeat about bringing a team to Buffalo, New York. Yes, that's right. One of the reasons this group was so upbeat about their chances was because Buffalo was already host to the minor league Buffalo Bisons, who had set the all time minor league record for attendance in 1988, just 2 years prior. The Bisons drew 1.15 million fans in a single season, and that was more than 3 major league teams had done that same season. They had a stadium, even though it was small, it held less than 20,000 people. But the ownership group that was putting this bid out said that they were planning to expand the stadium to 45,000 people within 7 months if Buffalo was awarded the team. Now, fans were excited. You had people put in over 10,000 deposits for season tickets in anticipation of this city getting a Major League Baseball team. But there were concerns. There was some hesitation about Buffalo's market size and how much it could grow in the future to expand economic capabilities for the team and for the city. And then on top of that, the MLB entry fee for this particular expansion round was very steep. They were asking for $95 million, and the ownership had some troubles coming up with that funding. So the end result was that the Buffalo bid was denied by Major League Baseball right alongside the Orlando Sun Rays. And we know already that Colorado and Miami got the bids that particular year. But in an alternate universe, instead of teams in Miami and Colorado, we could have had teams in Orlando and Buffalo. Did you know that Major League Baseball almost placed a team in Mexico City? Yes, that's right. In 1994, Alfredo Harp Helu, who was a prominent Mexican financier, spearheaded this bold bid to bring a Major League Baseball team to Mexico's capital. Now, to add even more financial bang to this proposal, Helu convinced his cousin, a guy named Carlos Slim, who was one of the wealthiest individuals in the world, to also back this bid. Now, Haley was already a huge baseball fan, as he owned another baseball club, the Diablos Rojos of the Mexican Baseball League. So the club in Mexican baseball could be considered the Dodgers of their league. They have one of the most storied franchises in that country's history. So, to support that proposal of bringing a major league team to the city in addition to the Diablos Rojos, Halo put in and said, I'm going to build a 50,000 state of the art seat domed stadium to serve as this team's home. Now, with all of this package put together, with all this money that was potentially tied into this bid, the MLB decided not to award this location an expansion club, and instead they went with bids for placing teams in Tampa and Arizona, the teams that would eventually become the Devil Rays, who would become the Rays, and the Diamondbacks. Now, even to this day, Helu hasn't given up on his dream of bringing a Major League Baseball team to Mexico. In 2019, he opened a modern 20,000 seat stadium for his existing Diablos Rojos squad, and that venue has hosted games for the MLB Mexico City series, which just occurred in 2023, which hosted the San Diego Padres and the San Francisco Giants. Now, there's still logistics concerns and growth potential roadblocks that could prevent a team from coming to this city, but you can count me as a supporter of placing a team in Mexico City. I think it would be a great move for the league and it would expand baseball across North America. We would have teams in Canada as well as Mexico. In the early 1940s, the St. Louis Browns were struggling to compete with their more successful crosstown rival, the Cardinals, both on the field and at the box office. So the team owner, a guy named Donald Barnes, saw a fresh start potential move to the West Coast as a solution. So by the end of 1941, Barnes had gone around and secured preliminary approval from the American League to relocate a team to Los Angeles. Now remember, there's no West Coast team yet for Major League Baseball. So this hasn't occurred yet with the Los Angeles Dodgers, the San Francisco Giants, but that's going to come. But this is before all those moves occurred. So what happened? So there was a formal vote that was scheduled to occur for the American League owners on December 8th, 1941, that would have finalized that move. But you may be ahead of me already for my history buffs. The day before that, there were events that altered these plans and the world's plans forever. That event on December 7th, 1941, was when there was an attack on Pearl Harbor, which plunged the United States into World War II. So that crisis, which happened for the next 4 years, led to the cancellation of those annual winter meetings the day after, and the Browns' relocation was put on an indefinite hold. And the thought of moving a team across the country during wartime just became the popular opinion amongst the American League and its owners, and the idea was eventually abandoned. It never came to fruition, it never came to another vote. So the Browns remained in St. Louis until 1953 when they relocated to Baltimore and became the Orioles. And I think this near move is certainly one of the more fascinating what ifs in baseball history. In the early 1960s, Kansas City Athletics owner Charlie Finley was fed up. He was locked into a really frustrating lease at the famously dumpy municipal stadium, and his team wasn't exactly thriving. So, like any restless owner would do, he started to look for a way out of his situation. Cities like Dallas and Seattle and Milwaukee all got a look from Finley, but one of the more serious plans that he considered was a move of taking the Athletics to Louisville, Kentucky. In 1964, Finley met with Louisville Mayor William Cowger and Kentucky Governor Edward Breathitt, and they struck a preliminary deal. Finley even signed a 2-year lease to play at Louisville's Fairgrounds Stadium. This wasn't just idle talk, this really looked like it was going to happen. And Finley planned to rebrand the team the Kentucky Athletics. But there was one problem. He needed approval from the other American League owners. And when it came time for a vote, the other owners shot down that idea 9-1, mainly citing concerns about the market size and stadium quality. But I will say from some readings that I went through, Charlie Finley was not the most popular owner amongst the others. And so that may have factored into the decision as well. So Finley didn't give up right away. He kept pushing for a move out of Kansas City for his team, and there was a brief flirtation with relocating the club to a city named Peculiar, Missouri. So we we may have had in an alternate universe the Peculiar Athletics. Crazy thought. So ultimately, Finley, I guess, broke down, for lack of a better term, and he signed a 4-year lease extension in Kansas City. But once that lease expired in 1967, the league finally gave him the green light to go west, which was what was happening with other clubs, and the Athletics eventually became Oakland's team in 1968. Now, as for Louisville, the city never got its shot at an MLB franchise, but it does remain a strong baseball town. It's home to the iconic Louisville Slugger. And the city also has a very rich history with Negro League teams, and they have a minor league team, the Louisville Bats, who have been around since 1982 with strong attendance and support. So maybe it's time that city got a second look. Folks, another second look that I've been taking at is what I can do to build up my mental wealth in 2025. For me, it's about creating some small, everyday habits that can help me handle life's challenges a little bit better. And that could be anything from improving my sleep to staying focused or just managing stress better. And that's where our old friend Magic Mind has come in. It's been about a year since I started using their product, and they recently sent me their new bundle that they're offering, the focus shots and the sleep shots. And I've been using them for about a week, and I feel like my daily routine has improved. I take a focus shot in the morning, and it's been a game changer for staying clear and sharp when I'm heading off to my teaching job without that usual caffeine crash that I was getting from energy drinks. Sometimes I'll take one even before recording an episode of Rounders, and it definitely helps with my ability to focus on the task at hand. And then at night, the sleep shots help me wind down in a way that feels more natural. It gives me deeper, more restful sleep. Now, right now, Magic Mind is offering 45% off their 24-hour bundle exclusively for you, my listeners. So just head to www.magicmind.com/roundersjan. That's Rounders JAN. Try it out. Make 2025 the year you invest in your mental wealth. I promise you, it's worth it. Let's jump ahead to 1985. We're going to go to Indianapolis. Indianapolis has a very storied baseball history. They had teams like the Blues in the 1870s, they had the Indians since 1902, and they had the Clowns, which was a prominent Negro League team from the 1930s to the 1980s. Well, in 1985, there was a group of local investors that were looking to capitalize on the excitement that was brought by the city's new NFL franchise, the Indianapolis Colts. So they followed up with an announcement for a plan to bring a club to the city, and they were going to name them the Indianapolis Arrows. So they were okay with doing this two different ways. They put in a bid to have a new expansion team, and they also started shopping with other existing struggling franchises, particularly the Pittsburgh Pirates and the Oakland Athletics, both of which were for sale at the time. And the community's enthusiasm in Indianapolis was very easy to see. They sold approximately 12,000 season ticket deposits before this even became a finalized deal. So there was fan support there. But just like a lot of the other bids we discussed, there were significant problems that caused the league to hold off. So some of those concerns included adapting the Hoosier Dome for baseball. That would have been incredibly expensive. The funding for a whole new stadium for an MLB team seemed politically improbable. And then you had the issue of there were already MLB teams in nearby Cincinnati, St. Louis, and Chicago. So that led to, I think, some justified worries about market overlap in terms of fan bases. So those concerns won out, unfortunately, and the Indianapolis Arrows never took flight. See what I did there? And so, this wasn't the first brush that the city had with MLB disappointment. This wasn't the first time that they tried, nor the last. Indianapolis had been a part of the American League's minor league unveiling in 1900. So when the American League unveiled itself, it spent 1 year as a minor league club, and then it became a major league competitor to the National League. And when that switch occurred, three cities lost teams, and that included Kansas City, Minneapolis, and Buffalo. So Kansas City and Minneapolis eventually made it back into the American League with teams, but unfortunately, Indianapolis and Buffalo still have not. In 1971, the Cleveland Indians were really struggling. They were having problems on the field, they were having problems with finances, and they finished that particular season with a record of 60 and 102. And team owner Vernon Stouffer was desperate for a way to get out of the city and try and be able to recoup some of the losses that he was suffering. So that desperation led to an unconventional idea, especially for the time period. He proposed splitting the Indians' home games between Cleveland and New Orleans, Louisiana. So Stouffer did the legwork on this. He struck a deal with the Louisiana Superdome Commission to play 30 home games down there. And the agreement was for 25 years for them to play in the soon to be built Superdome, which in itself was a modern engineering marvel for stadiums at the time. The man behind the Superdome, who was businessman David Dixon, he had originally envisioned the Superdome as being a multi sport facility, and it would be one that could host baseball and basketball and football. So he was working with Stouffer because he wanted to bring this vision to life right off the bat for this newly constructed venue. Not everybody was sold, though. You had American League President Joe Cronin. Some other team owners were concerned about a club making this move of playing in two different cities. There was another guy that spoke up as a prominent critic of this deal, Charlie Finley, the guy who had gotten denied his move to Louisville. He outspokenly argued that having half the team's games in New Orleans would alienate Cleveland fans and make an already bad situation worse. And he famously added during these meetings that he would only support a plan if the Indians moved to New Orleans full time. And unfortunately, in the end, as we know, the proposal ended up falling apart and the Indians stayed in Cleveland. Our next club might confuse you a little bit because while the expansion team never happened, this city did end up getting an MLB team shortly after. So just go with me for a second. It's the mid 1970s. The San Francisco Giants were in serious trouble. Attendance at Candlestick Park was abysmal. And the owner of the team at the time, Horace Stoneham, was really buried in debt. So he was looking to move the team out of San Francisco. And by January of that same year, he had agreed to sell the team in principle for $13.25 million to a Toronto based group that was led by Labatt Brewing Company, the beer. So this was a serious contender looking to buy the team, the franchise from San Francisco. You also had Vulcan Assets, a large corporation, and the Canadian Imperial Bank of Commerce throw in their hats to try and get the Giants over to Toronto. And it seemed like it was a done deal. But San Francisco wasn't ready to let go of its club. Newly elected Mayor George Moscone fought to keep the team in the Bay Area, and he even secured a court injunction to block the sale from happening. Now, while that was going on, local investors, who were led by a real estate magnate named Bob Lurie, stepped up and put out a matching offer to keep the Giants in San Francisco. And their efforts paid off. The Giants ended up staying in the city due to those efforts of blocking the team's move. Now, Toronto obviously wanted a team. They had big backers to bring one to the city, and they didn't have to wait long because later that same year, the city was awarded an American League expansion franchise. And that gave birth to the Toronto Blue Jays, who started playing their first season in 1977. But even still, it's kind of fun to imagine a world where Toronto's first MLB team wasn't the Blue Jays, but the Giants. That brings us to our final club on the list of expansion teams that almost happened but didn't, and that is a team called the Charlotte Twins. This happened in 1997. But if we zoom out, the late 1990s were a bit of a rough time for the Minnesota Twins. They were on shaky ground. They were having trouble getting butts into seats, and that was leading to a more and more precarious financial situation for them. In addition to that, the team's lease at the Metrodome was set to expire. So, team owner Carl Pohade was frustrated by the city's refusal to fund a new stadium for the Twins. So, that frustration led him to go out and have serious talks of relocation with a particular group in Charlotte, North Carolina, who emerged as the top candidate for the Twins to move to. There was a local Charlotte businessman called Don Beaver. He spearheaded Charlotte's bid. He worked out a deal with the Twins team owner to purchase it and move it to the Queen City. And the Twins would have played at Knights Stadium, which was the home of the AAA Charlotte Knights. It was a facility that was already filling up seats. People liked the team, and there were MLB plans drawn up to expand the stadium if they moved to the city. And Charlotte had a really popular, I think, um, opinion. It was a growing city. It was fresh off them getting an NFL franchise, the Carolina Panthers. So there was some momentum behind moving the Twins to Charlotte. But other problems popped up, as we've seen with these other bids. Funding was a huge issue for this particular move. Particularly, the issue was around securing funding to renovate and expand the AAA stadium that they would have played in, Knight Stadium. So that really was the straw that broke the camel's back. That necessary backing never materialized. And Pohade eventually came to a part where he said, you know what, I'm just going to keep the team in Minnesota. But he kept fighting for that new ballpark, and Minnesota eventually gave that to him. In 2010, the Twins finally got their new ballpark, Target Field. Charlotte unfortunately had those MLB dreams dashed. They still have the AAA Charlotte Knights, which are the farm team for the Chicago White Sox. They have a beautiful stadium in uptown Charlotte, too. I think Charlotte eventually should get a second look at becoming an MLB city, but time will tell. So there you have it, folks. 9 cities that almost got a major league expansion team, but unfortunately, as fate would have it, never got the opportunity. This was an especially fun episode to research. I love the what ifs that baseball often brings. And some of these teams, just thinking about these cities getting these franchises, leads to some really interesting scenarios of watching players play in certain areas or what could have happened in terms of the trajectory of certain franchises. And it's just fun to think about the potential, alternate reality wise, of what could occur. So I hope you would enjoy this too. If you get a chance, if you're listening on Spotify, please let me know which city you think should get an expansion team next in Major League Baseball. You can also do the poll on our Substack if you want to sign up for free at rounders.substack.com. I'd love to hear your feedback on where you think the MLB should go next with an expansion franchise. That's all I have for this episode. Thanks for tuning in. I'll see you next week. Rounders, A History of Baseball in America is hosted by Jeffrey Lambert and produced by Shaker Road Media. A special thanks to our premium subscribers who give just $1.25 a week to help grow this show. Our starting 9 supporters who have chosen our highest support level include Nathan Halverson and Neil Townsend. A special thanks to you. Sign up at www.rounders.substack.com to get our free bonus show, more photos and videos of our topic material, and support this show financially if you are able. Thanks for your support, and remember, there are only two seasons, winter and baseball.